especially grateful to you all to show up. Shows the Minnesota spirit that in the face of some daunting weather later in the day, you were fearless in coming anyway. So thank you very much for doing that. This event has been going on, as I said, for 5 years. It is the creation and something that has been sustained, dare I say, by our two business chairs, Dr. Marela Mirasan and Dr. Karen Gulliver. I'm very grateful to them for having done that and to continue doing so. So if we could, I'd like to applaud. Universities have long had roles other than just educating their students. I say just advisedly. That is our primary mission, and clearly one that is front and center for us. But we do see ourselves as having other roles, and one key role is providing a forum or a venue for the discussion of current topics to help educate the public, to bring together smart people, interested parties, to talk about or think about, and in some cases stimulate action towards resolution. It shouldn't just be about awareness, and that's certainly not our intention. In some years we've had topics that are very exciting and interesting. This year's is very sobering and serious. And it's one that we aren't just interested in talking about awareness, but also about messages of hope and movement towards solution. So this is an action-oriented conference. It isn't just one where we contemplate ideas, but that we also, in the spirit of our institution, we are also about practitioners. We're also about creating individuals who go out into the world and do things. And so that is also the intention of this. It's to support action as well as to discuss a very, very important topic. This year, we're extremely thrilled by being able to have this conference initiated and launched by the Honorable Amy Klobuchar, Senior Senator for Minnesota. We're very, very pleased that she could take a few minutes to join us here today and speak on this with us. As most Minnesotans know, she was elected to the Senate in 2006 and now has been re-elected as of last November. She's been a strong advocate for Minnesota values on critical issues facing our nation, from promoting long-term economic growth and job creation to bringing fiscal responsibility and accountability to Washington, from supporting our Minnesota businesses, workers, and farmers to developing homegrown energy. It is evident that Senator Klobuchar's positions and actions are very much in sync with the spirit and intentions of the Argosy University Sustainability Conference. Senator Klobuchar has worked across party lines to pass legislation that represents the interests of the people of Minnesota, including full funding of the 35W Bridge, working with Minnesota National Guard to support the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program, and helping Minnesota families with everything from adoptions to consumer issues. It's important to note that Senator Klobuchar is currently a member of the Judiciary Committee, Commerce Committee, Agriculture Committee, and Joint Economic Committee. Especially relevant to our conference this year, Senator Klobuchar has introduced legislation which addresses exploitation through human trafficking. As a former prosecutor serving for 8 years as Hennepin County Attorney, she knows the horror and violence women and children experience as victims. Working across party lines, Senator Klobuchar and Republican Senator John Cronin of Texas introduced bipartisan legislation which empowers law enforcement to crack down on those involved in the heinous crime of human trafficking. Please join me in welcoming Senator Amy Klobuchar to our podium. We are grateful for her public service and her willingness to speak to us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tjaden. Thank you, all of you, for coming on this what will be a snowy day. I somehow have to go to St. Cloud. This will be interesting. Although it won't be nearly as fun as my last few days when we decided to schedule a trip. I visit all 87 counties every single year, and we decided to schedule all of the most northern counties on the Canadian border. Now, the best thing about this, even though we did this in February, was that we went to War Road, Hockey Town, USA, in which everyone is now claiming to be related to TJ Oshie. Like everyone is a third cousin, a fourth cousin. But one of the most fun things is that I got to actually have my picture taken with 3 former silver medalists in hockey, including Henry Boucher, which was really a lot of fun. And it's fun to see that they're finally getting attention because of the new people that have come up for the Olympics. Anyway, but we're here to talk about something a little more serious than the Olympics, and that is this major national and international epidemic of sex trafficking. Minnesota actually has been on the forefront of this in terms of taking this on and not just accepting it as a way of life. In particular, Ramsey County John Choi, who I know you're going to hear from, has done a wonderful job of getting some, with his office and his prosecutors and the police in his area, getting some very long sentences, including recently a 40-year sentence against one of the people that was running one of the rings. So we thank you for that, John. I also know that you're going to be hearing from Sir Patrick Atkinson, who's the founder of Institute for Trafficked, Exploited, and Missing Persons. This is truly, I think you'll hear, something that while we want to do what we can on the local basis, that's where we start our efforts, and if we didn't do that, we'd have nothing. We have to also admit that some of this cannot be tackled appropriately just at the local level. It's about federal law, and it's also about how we work with our international partners, what kind of agreements we get with them to extradite people, or what kind of agreements they have to protect victims of sex trafficking. And that's how a lot of people first got involved in this issue, and I think now people are realizing this is happening actually in the oil patch in North Dakota as we speak. There was a major indictment there, and Senator Heidi Heitkamp and I did an event together in Fargo with so many people showed up because they are so concerned about what's going on the oil patch. I really appreciate, I loved how the doctor was saying that you maybe have more rosy, optimistic, happy topics than this one, that the fact that you're looking at this as part of the sustainability of our country, of our community, and are willing to tackle this today makes a difference. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, the numbers are one of the things that some of our bills hope to address in terms of getting some accurate counts. But when you look at human trafficking as a whole, whether it's sex trafficking or bringing people against their will to places to do work, more than 27 million people around the world are victims of some kind of trafficking each year. Think about that number for a moment, 27 million people. And the average age for sex trafficking right in Minnesota, right in our country, is actually age 13. Age 13, not even old enough to get a driver's license, not even old enough to go to the high school prom. So those are the numbers, but I think what really matters is the people. And I think you're here to talk about this issue because of the people. People like Bobby Larson. The Star Tribune recently wrote a fantastic series about her story of survival, of being a teen sex trafficking victim and working hard to turn her life around and go 180 degrees in the other direction. Bobby is one of our kids, a kid, mom in Minnesota. Her story spans the state from 2 harbors on the North Shore to the Twin Cities. You're here because of people like Tamara Vandermoon. Tamara was 12 when she was first sold for sex. She wasn't even a teenager. She was mad at her mom, and she ran away. A pimp found her and made all kinds of promises. Promises that sounded pretty good when you're a scared kid away from home. She was taken advantage of when she was most vulnerable, before she even had a chance to grow up and become an adult. These stories remind us that this problem is happening not just over in Asia, not just down in Mexico. It's happening not just in New York City. It's happening right in our neighborhoods. In November, I had the honor of taking part in the groundbreaking for a new shelter, which is specifically for girls and young women who have been trafficked. The Safe and Sound Shelter is being built by 180 Degrees in St. Paul. I love that name, 180 Degrees, because I think we understand it's about doing the work that John works, prosecuting the bad guys, the people that are doing this, but it's also about doing what we can to turn these girls' lives around. The work done on this shelter, the federal government provided $350,000 through a New Markets tax credit. The city of St. Paul contributed a $500,000 grant. And when we look at this issue of sex trafficking, it feels to me like something that's sort of been for so long behind closed doors that people don't want to talk about. They see the advertisements on places like Backpage.com. They know what's going on. They hear about it, but they don't do that much about it. Well, that's how it used to be for child abuse. That's how it used to be for domestic assault, where there were just these hidden crimes, things that people don't talk about. And then when it started to get out in the open, when people like Paul and Sheila Wellstone were willing to take it out and say, we had to have shelters, we're going to build this building and show that there actually are victims of this, and the people in the community have to stand with them and help them turn their lives around. That's why I started with talking about this shelter, because it's not a big place, it's not that many beds, but it's a symbol that the community is coming together to say enough is enough. This isn't something that's just going on in the courtrooms. Now, what can we do federally? Well, the president mentioned the legislation that I'm working on, and it's legislation with a pretty conservative Republican from Texas, Senator Cornyn. Well, maybe not quite as conservative Senator Cruz, the other senator from Texas, but Senator Cornyn and I have, we serve on the Judiciary Committee together. We've done several bills together in the criminal area, successfully passed a number of things. And so we took this on, and what our bill does is really take the Minnesota model. Minnesota was ahead of our time. Legislators like Sandy Pappas from St. Paul and others came together and worked with advocates and law enforcement and came up with this idea of why are we prosecuting these kids that are the victims, particularly kids under 18. And that's what was going on. And what would happen then is they get prosecuted. Whether they plead guilty or not, they don't get much time, but then they go right back out on the street again, hiding from the cops, and not part of a solution for themselves or the solution for getting the bad guys off the street. So the idea here was to create a safe harbor so that they couldn't be prosecuted. So in fact, they would be viewed as victims and get services and get help. And that was a major change in Minnesota law that just went through. And what our bill does is to take that model called Safe Harbor. I was actually doing an interview with a Duluth TV station. John will appreciate this, an interview with the Duluth TV station about the Safe Harbor law. And after a while, I realized they thought I meant their harbor in Duluth, that it ought to be safe, because I go, no, it's a legal term. It's a legal term. And so, in any case, I got clarified that after about 5 minutes of questions. But it's this idea that they're not going to be prosecuted. So that's a big part of the bill. And how we do it, because people have talked about this as a model, in fact, in the Violence Against Women Act that we just passed finally, after 3 years of trying, and got some, we worked very hard to get some strong provisions in there regarding tribal victims and other things, and we're very pleased with that bill. And in it there is a bit about sex trafficking, about using this safe harbor idea as a best practice, but there's no real incentive or carrot or a stick for states to adopt it. So what Cornyn and I have done in this bill is that we actually put in very clear incentives that in 3 years, if states don't adopt a safe harbor type bill, that they start losing a bit of their money, some of their federal funding money. And that's how we got all the seatbelt laws across the country. That's how we got .08 and some other laws. That's a very successful model for states to step in and do something. So that's what it does. We also set up a more coordinated effort, a national strategy to combat human trafficking, to try to bring local, state law enforcement together on this issue. And we have some other provisions in there that are strongly supported by the victims community. Another piece of legislation that I'm on that Senator Cornyn, Senator Wyden, and I have actually upped some of the fees when there is a federal prosecution. As John Torrey will tell you, most of these prosecutions are local. When I was in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, we always felt like we had to do everything, and the federal government prosecutions would only pick and choose a few of them. But when they do pick and choose them, they tend to be bigger rings and bigger cases. And so what we've done with this bill is say when it's a federal prosecution, because that's the only thing we have control over with federal legislation, is that we'll up the fines, and it's going to generate about $30 million a year, and we're going to use that money for shelters and other local efforts. So that's another bill that I'm hopeful will go through. In terms of the support we're getting, I've joined efforts with Cindy McCain, wife of John McCain, And she's really taking this on because the Super Bowl is coming to Arizona next. As you know, it was just in New Jersey. And one of the things, and the Super Bowl is not unique, any major kind of convention or sporting event, these sex trafficking perpetrators will prey on victims at these events. They'll advertise them at the Super Bowl. They'll have ads. In 2011, the ads, quadrupled, and they have things like Super Bowl specials and things like that. It generates some of this activity. So it's not unique to the Super Bowl, but it's something that Cindy McCain, being in Arizona, where they don't yet have a strong law, which is right near, as you know, on the Mexican border, which is now the #1 country for victims coming up from Mexico, is really taking this on to get some laws in place in Arizona, and I think she's going to be successful before the Super Bowl. But in any case, we did a joint meeting that I helped set up with the NFL, which was very interesting, before the Super Bowl, to get their support for sex trafficking prevention laws, which they gave us. And somehow then magically John McCain became a sponsor of my bill after that meeting, so that was pretty good. And Cindy was great, and I can tell you there's no much more fun thing than walking into Fox News, which is not always totally fun for me, but going on with Cindy McCain, yes. So in any case, this is clearly a bipartisan effort, and something that has continued to be that way and go that way. So I just want to end by thanking all the dedicated people in this room willing to speak here on this, what will be a snowy day, and all the people that you're going to hear about today, and law enforcement, people like you wouldn't imagine, Marilyn Carlson Nelson, the head of Carlson Companies, which runs the Radisson hotels, right? As we know, a lot of this goes on in hotels. She's not hiding from this issue. She's been willing to take this on, put money into training law enforcement, training her own workers to spot what's going on. It's those kinds of efforts that are really going to make a difference. So thank you so much. I'm excited about what Minnesota is doing. Once again, we're ahead of the curve. We're taking on an issue that no one wants to talk about, and that's what you're doing in this conference today. Thank you very much.